everyone, for your enlightening words. Now may I invite on stage Mr. Richard Hinchliffe, Technical Principal, Tunnels and Underground Structures, MEG Bangladesh, to share his experience with us.
Okay, good afternoon everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name is Richard. I work for SMEC International here in Bangladesh for the last 18 months. I was asked to come and talk to you a bit about my experience in civil engineering. This is the first time I've done this, by the way, so the previous two speakers and Barack Obama on the video are going to be hard acts to follow. Coming here today takes me back a long time ago, 49 years nearly, when I was preparing for my finals at the University of Leeds in England. So it's a bit scary to think it's that long ago. So I was going to just talk about the beginning. Why did I choose civil engineering? Or why do you choose civil engineering as a career? What inspires you? And I believe you have to have some source of inspiration. My own inspiration came from my interest in the development of railways in UK during the 1800s and 1900s, and the legacy of structures that have been left behind, particularly bridges and railway stations. I had originally, when I was at school, thought to sort of being a mechanical engineer, but I switched my choice to civil engineering because of I felt there was opportunities to travel around the world, work in different countries, as British civil engineers had done throughout the Indian subcontinent and Australia, New Zealand, and North America and so on, Canada. And so I chose to pursue a degree in civil engineering, and I went to Leeds University, which was my first choice, which was a very good school of civil engineering. And at the end of, and while I was at school at university, I also studied geology, and physical geography and geology were actually my main interests. The ground, soil and rocks. But after university, after I graduated, I was looking for a job because I knew, as we all should, that we have to pursue a career. And there were very few opportunities back then. And I had two choices to make, I remember. One of them was an offer to work for a contractor in South Africa, and the other was an offer from a company in England on a piling contractor. I chose not to go to South Africa because at the time apartheid was ongoing, so I decided I didn't want to get involved with that. So I joined the piling contractor, and the biggest thing was the transition from school university environment to a construction site. Piling is a rather messy business. And I quite enjoyed it, but it took me far from home, so I moved from the north of England to the South Wales, lived in a guest house for 6 months. So it's a bit tough. It was a bit tough as a young man, but I soon adapted to that. The weather was also very bad. It was winter time. It seemed to rain every day. And I worked with people I'd never met before, the general foreman, the skilled workers on the machines, and unskilled workers. So it was totally different. But by doing that, I started to learn, and I understood piling. This particular project was driven H-piles to bedrock for bridge foundations for a new highway. I moved on to some small building development projects in several places in the UK, or a shops office, I don't know what was the other one, a fire station and a leisure centre and something. After a few years of doing that, I was getting a bit disillusioned, but I knew that I had to continue, and I wanted to become chartered. So to do that, I would need to have design experience. So it's important to get a balance of site experience and design experience. And I was a graduate member of the Institution of Civil Engineers in London. So they had a training program which I didn't particularly follow it very well, but I should have done better there. But I had to get the design experience, and I applied to consultants, and the only one which would take me on said, well, we need you on site in a tunnel project for a year before we can let you work in the design office. And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. I want to work in the design office now. And they persisted, and I said, oh, all right, I'll go and work at the tunnel project. And so I joined that company. It was a smallish consultancy which no longer exists, based in London. And I went down to Kent to this tunnel project, which was for transmission cables from a power station to pass under a river estuary. Anyway, as soon as I got there, and I worked for the RE, he was an old Scotsman, and he taught me everything. As soon as I got there and I went in the tunnel, I loved it. I thought the environment was brilliant and quite dangerous. So back then, the safety of sites was not so strict as it is now. The methods of working weren't so very safe, but I enjoyed it. But people on site look out for themselves and each other when it comes to safety. It's just that there weren't the rules and regulations established, and prevention, safety, protective equipment and safety equipment wasn't so obvious. We wore helmets, but that was about it. And so anyway, I spent a year in the tunnel, and I fell in love with it because of my love of geology. And when I was in the tunnel, I had to do the surveying and do face inspections and reports to my boss. And it was an open face shield, and not knowing what was in front of you. It was stiff London clay, but even so, there were seams of sand in it, water-bearing sand. And not knowing what's ahead of you was always the exciting part. It's a bit like piling, not knowing when you're going to hit rock. And my job on the piling job was to do the measurements and setting out. And the other aspect of site work is records, which I saw on the screen there. Administration of site, keeping records of work done for the QSs back in head office, records of materials and plant. As a foreman always kept the labour records, and keeping a diary. So it's important to keep records. That's something you will hopefully learn when you get out there. So I did, after a year in the tunnel, I did my design experience. Spent about 15 months doing reinforced concrete design, and in those days we did everything by hand, calculations, and we did our own drawings using drawing boards, T-squares and Z-squares, pencil and pens, ink pens, proper drawing pens. Nowadays it's all CAD. So I started my career before the digital age, before computers and before smartphones. So for me, there's been a big change over the years, probably since 2000, when digital equipment started to become more common. After that, I was fortunate to be accepted on a master's course in rock mechanics at the University of Newcastle upon Tyne, which was connected to mining and tunnelling. And going back to university 6 years later, I've developed a better appreciation of what engineering is about, because when I was an undergraduate, it didn't really mean much to me. And you know, the teaching was a bit too academic and theoretical. And my least favourite subject then was hydraulics, which I never understood. It was very empirical. However, I could go on all day. Being on the master's course, yes, we did three-dimensional mathematics, tensor analysis, but most of it was a practical nature. And soils and rocks are not exact materials. One can only make approximate models or approximate theories of how they behave under stress. So that was a one-year course with it wasn't purely academic. There was a practical side to it, which involved some measurements of rock quality in a coal mine. And then, for me anyway, that opened up the doors for a career in tunnelling. And so in 1978 it was, if you can think that far back, I joined a tunnelling contractor, a water tunnel, rock tunnel, which was being done. It was very long. There were two lengths of 14 kilometres through sedimentary rocks to transfer water from one river basin through another one to a third one, which the Tees River, which actually needed more water for industry. And yeah, so it was good. I was in charge of one section of tunnel. The two sections were about 14 kilometres each, and they were being done by tunnel boring machines with concrete linings after. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. And what I would say about site work is it's dirty, muddy, long hours, hard work, tiring. As an engineer, you've got to be there while the work is being done by the guys on the site, by the machine operators and the labour. So, although I generally only work 5 days a week, sometimes you've got to work 6. But after that, it gave me an opportunity to move on and to travel outside my country. And as I said earlier, the civil engineering gives you the opportunities to work in other countries, and so I fulfilled a goal or a dream. Maybe it was more of a dream than a goal. I was chartered, of course, by then, and no, sorry, I wasn't chartered. But I got a chance to work in Hong Kong on the underground metro as a tunnel engineer. Worked for a Japanese contractor building a tunnel for a year, and then I worked 2 years in design office for the Island Line section of the development of the Hong Kong metro. And I had a thoroughly enjoyable time and mixing with other engineers, like-minded people, playing sport and keeping fit.
Is the tunneling and metro in Dhaka City costly?
Yes, it will be. All metros are very expensive. Tunneling is very expensive, yes. And because of the risks, largely because of the ground risks. So as I said earlier about when you're in a tunnel, there's the unknown. because they can't have a geological study of everything, because the survey, the boreholes can cost a lot of money, so it's a balance between cost of survey and interpretation through experience. And Dhaka, I don't know how much experience there is of the ground here. I haven't actually gone into it yet. But in Hong Kong, there was building up a knowledge of ground conditions, but it was generally fairly much the same everywhere: granite and decomposed granite, which is the soil. So I did 2 years and a bit in design office. I got my chartership and moved to Singapore on the first phase of the metro in Singapore, and I was a very young resident engineer on one section of one contract, which was tunnels and station. Hello.
Yeah, my friend Richard.
So
Richard, let's take some questions because they like to know so many other things about you. So let them ask some questions.
all right. Well, anyway, I got to a point in my career where I was moving up and on, and it brought me to Bangladesh. And Smek, persuaded me to come here, right? He's the HR director over there, smiling. Yes. Yes, I can
So let's take some questions.
take questions anytime. Yes.
Dear students, Richard has a very long experience, and it's not possible to talk about everything today.
No.
But I'm sure you have a lot of questions.
I won't.
But Richard is one of those engineers who has traveled all over the world,
Well,
implementing interesting and complicated projects.
not all over the world, but Asia.
Most of them. And
Only in Asia. Only in Asia.
yeah, okay. Anyway, so please shoot my questions. Ask questions. Asking questions is one of the fundamental skills that you need when you go to a career. Please ask questions.
I am Shuman Hussain, graduate from University of Asia Pacific. I want a recommendation from you. What your advice for us that we are new engineers? We don't have any experience, practical experience, but I want to know the advice. What you would be the advice for us?
My advice to any undergraduate after you graduate is to work for a contractor and learn the nuts and bolts of construction, reinforced concrete, steel, piling, tunneling, whatever, and work on the ground, work your way up, and after say 3-4 years doing that, then think about going into design office. Now, design office is normally a very cozy environment. So you come from a cozy university environment, and if you go straight to design office, you still don't know very much because you don't know how anything's built. So you might design something, and one of the problems with young design engineers is they don't have the practical knowledge of what the client wants. So it's always understanding what the client wants. If you have some practical experience of reinforced concrete, bridges or whatever, then you can go into design office and say, oh yes, I remember that on site, I learned that on site. We can make the design buildable. Constructability is very important for clients. Any other questions?
Hello, sir. So I was listening to you. You said earlier in your career when you joined in a consultancy company, you tried to be a designer, but the consultancy company doesn't allow, so they transferred you into a tunnel project. So in our country, when we fresh engineers, we want to go into a consultancy company, we all want to be a designer, but all we get was a site engineer. So how to solve that?
Yeah, I think Richard has already answered that. You have to be a site engineer first so that you can become a good design engineer. Don't be scared to go to the site.
Yeah.
This is advice number 1.
Don't be scared.
Get out of a comfortable environment. Don't want to work in a air conditioned office.
As I said, if you had heard me, is that I left university. My first job was far away from my hometown, and I lived in a guest house in a part of the world I'd never been to before. It was in South Wales, in my own country.
Let me add to what Richard has said. Lesson number 1, get out of your parents' home. As soon as you can do that. Lesson number 2, don't always be obedient. Don't always listen to your parents. There are many more lessons.
I was fortunate. My parents didn't, they allowed me to do whatever I chose to do. So, although I had limited choices, after graduation, I took this particular job. 3 months after I graduated, in effect, 1 month after my interview with them. And so I was quite fortunate because it's not easy. It wasn't anyway for me in the UK because the economy was a bit slack. It wasn't easy to get a job very quickly.
Any other question, please?
Hello sir, good afternoon. I'm Shajib, graduate from University of Asia Pacific. So my question is, we have already heard that right now you have too much experience in civil engineering field job in many other countries in the world. What is the qualities of an engineer to work in abroad and different kinds of field in civil engineering? Please.
Well, I always believed in being humble and to be confident and speak clearly, be confident in your own abilities, and have ambition in the direction you're going. So I wasn't phased. As I said, I went to Hong Kong, which was very Chinese, and I wasn't phased by it, and I fell in love with it. And then I worked later in Singapore, and I've actually worked in Nepal before I came here. So it's not too many. I've also worked in India for SMEC recently. I've been to India, and you probably know that, but India is, for me anyways, a bit similar to this country. And even in the UK there are differences across the country.
Just let me add one thing. I think you have to be culturally sensitive and be respectful to wherever you are working. Right, Richard?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So, suppose you are born and brought up in Rajshahi, but then you are sent to work at site in Sylhet or Chittagong. There are so many subtle differences between the culture of Rajshahi and that of Sylhet or Chittagong. So you have to understand that those show respect to the local culture. This rule applies to all over the world, any country in the world. So if you can learn how to adapt to a new culture, I think you are almost 50% done. Okay? Next question, please.
Sir, you have faced very difficult problems and you have already solved many problems about civil engineering related. So my question is, which term you are focused for solve the problem, or if I will be a civil engineer, if I will face any problem, what I should do to solve the problem?
Problem solving involves several people. You can perhaps suggest a solution if you're not sure, but also you must communicate, talk to other people. One thing, that's what I'm saying, I learned from other people, even if they weren't engineers. I learned the practicalities, even like welding. I couldn't say I'm a welder, but I've learned about welding from welders, not from engineers or textbooks. So problems, They come up occasionally, but you need to talk to people who've got experience in that kind of work. If you've no one to talk to, well, I'm sorry, if you're working, you've always got someone around you to talk to, or your boss.
Yeah, just let me add quickly that when you work in a field or on a project, it's always a teamwork. No one can solve a problem on his or her own, okay? So show respect to your team members. Even the person who brings you tea or coffee in the morning or cleans your office, who drives you, your driver, your colleagues, your junior colleagues, senior colleagues, everyone deserves a respect from you. If you can do that, then you can get the best out of them, and that will help you solving the problem. Number 2 is you have to be proactive and always keep researching. These days you have Google and all those things. So no problem is so big that it cannot be solved. Okay, we'll take the last question.
And the fact you stood up and asked the question shows you have confidence.
Yeah.
So that's what you keep that up.
That's right. So let's take the last question. We are running out of time.
Started late. I hope you've all visited the SMEC stall and seen the video and the material we have there. That gives you a good insight into the large projects.
If there is no other question, we can, I think, conclude, right?
The projects in Bangladesh that SMEC are involved in.
Okay. All right, no other question. We are concluding. One last bit of advice, take risk. Don't remain within your zone of comfort. Step out of the comfort zone.
Yes.
Please, please, please. Without risk, you cannot achieve anything.
Yes, okay.